What's happening, people? Welcome back to the Athletes to Athletes podcast. Today, I talk with Wagner College student Ally Meehan, who is pursuing a double major in sports administration and psychology and will be looking to join the sports community's mental health space after she finishes school. Ally also competes on the triathlon team and discusses how she implements her studies into maintaining her own mental health. So I hope you enjoyed today's conversation with Ally, and as always, I appreciate you listening to the A2A podcast. So we are back with the A2A podcast, and today I am sitting down with Ally. And Ally, I am really happy to be talking to you, one, because we're going to be talking about sports psychology, which is something that has become, such an interesting topic and an even more important topic, but also, you're still a student. So getting that student perspective of things is always really cool to see. I have a chance to talk to, former athletes and former coaches, but talking to people that are, still studying these things and kind of seeing what things are changing, where things are changing, I should say. It's always really cool for me. So before we even get into all the things you're studying and your sports background, give us a little kind of Ally 101, I guess, and let us know who you are, where you're from, what school you go to, what you're studying.
Yeah, thanks so much, Ryan. I'm really excited to talk to you as well about all this. So I am currently a senior at Wagner College, which is a smaller school in Staten Island. And I have been competing in triathlon the past 4 years. So I'm just about to finish up. I'm about to graduate this spring. And I am double majoring in psychology and sports administration. But I will be starting in the fall my master's in sport and exercise psychology.
Mm-hmm. So what was it about triathlon that you were like, this is my sport?
Yeah, so I got into the sport when I was pretty young. My whole family's involved in it. My dad still competes quite a bit, my brothers. So when it was added into the NCAA, and I think it was 2013 or 2014, I was really excited to become involved in the sport. And it's still growing. A lot of schools are still picking it up for women. So it's a great place for the sport. So I've been really fortunate to be able to do it at the NCAA level.
Mm-hmm. And you were running track and everything like that in high school. And triathlon really isn't like a high school sport, right? Like it's more of something on the NCAA level now. But when you're entering in, different, events and things like that, they're not part of your high school. So how did you kind of balance the two of track and field for your high school as well as all these other events on the side?
Right. I feel like everyone does it a little bit differently. I did run cross country all 4 years. I only ran track 2 of the years because in the springs I would focus on getting to some triathlons before the summer season. Mm-hmm. And I swam a bit on a club, but a lot of the swimming was done on my own. So yeah, not a lot of high schools do have those triathlon clubs. I think that maybe some do, but most of them are clubs outside of the high school. So I was a part of one. I didn't necessarily train with them, but I raced with that team. But yeah, everyone does it a little bit differently. So it seemed to work out just to be able to do that and run cross country in the fall and then focus on swimming in the winter and then really get into triathlon starting in the spring and then go into the season in the summer.
Mm-hmm. So you said that your dad still competes and your family's involved in it, but, so obviously you had some family influence, but what was it for you that, really made triathlon your sport instead of cross country or track, something like that?
Honestly, I just love the opportunity to combine all 3 sports. Like when I was running cross country and when I was swimming club, I couldn't see myself doing that at the NCAA level and any of those sports. So when I saw triathlon, I was like, that would be so cool. And I was a little bit nervous to start into an NCAA sport that was emerging because it's been up and down. I mean, there's some good things about it. There's some downsides as well. But I was excited to be a part of this emerging NCAA sport.
Mm-hmm. So when you're picking a school and you said, it's still an emerging sport, but you're looking at different schools and obviously you're looking for the academic side, is being able to, and I think you mentioned it, is being able to compete in triathlon, was it a really big deciding factor when you were deciding where you wanted to go?
At that time, yes, I would say that it was a pretty big deciding factor. I mean, I originally wanted to just major in psychology. So finding that major at an institution wasn't a challenge. Most schools have psychology. So yes, I was looking for a program that would have triathlon and that would have the academics that I wanted. And I was open to, I think I was looking at all three divisions. I was, looking at a lot of different schools, but I was looking to really just find that best fit where I would really thrive with academics and athletics.
Mm-hmm. So once you narrowed down the schools that you were looking at, what schools were kind of on your list, and how did you, what kind of criteria did you have for the one that you actually ended up picking?
Yeah, so I looked at schools all over the country. So I looked at obviously Wagner, where I am now. I love the location. I really liked it being in New York City. I also looked at East Tennessee, which is in Johnstown City, Tennessee. I looked there. I looked at Black Hills State, which is a Division II school, and I looked at Colorado Mesa, which is also a Division II school. Mm-hmm. So I think it was pretty much down to those four. So I was kind of looking at location because I really liked being in New York. I really liked when I visited, just like that opportunity to be in New York City. But I also wanted athletically to find a team that I would fit in well with other athletes, because the way that triathlon works is they have 7 athletes race from each team, similar to cross country. So I would want to go to a school where I had a good chance of competing all 4 years. I wouldn't want it to be the case where I wasn't able to compete in the race, because it's not like a necessarily one of the team sports where you're switching out in and out players during the game. You're either in the race fully or you're not in the race. So yeah, I wanted to find a team where I was going to be competitive and I was going to help the team, hopefully. Mm-hmm. So that was one of the factors. Again, location and just how I fit. I think when I went to Black Hills State, it's in South Dakota, it was just so different for me, the culture there and everything. And I was like, wow, it's really cool visiting here, but I'm just not sure if I can see myself here for 4 years. Mm-hmm. So I think just taking all those different factors into account was really important, and it really helped to guide my decision.
Yeah. So now you said that, you're a double major, but when you were originally looking at schools, you were only looking at psychology. When did, the second major come into play, and how did you start to decide that you wanted to kind of merge the two?
Yeah, so going into college, I knew that I wanted to go into sports psychology, and Wagner didn't necessarily have anything in sports psychology, but they had psychology. So for me, that was good. My first year, I declared my psychology major, and then when I declared my major, I got my advisor and everything. We started talking. I told her I was very interested in sports psychology, and she says, Ally, you won't believe this. We're actually adding sports and men to Wagner. I was like, that is perfect. That's great. That I can get a little bit of a sports background. That'll help when I apply to graduate programs. Amazing. So they added it, I think, my second year. Then I added that as another major, and it all just seemed to work out. And then I just have kind of balanced those two majors. Honestly, I took quite a few of my sportsman classes when I studied abroad a year ago, last spring. So I took most of them there, and then I've taken most of my psychology courses at Wagner. But just finding that balance, I have an amazing advisor, so she's really helped me navigate that process.
Yeah. So what was the transition like once you got to college, right? There's, everyone I talked to, they were student athletes in college, and everybody has a different experience, myself included, of when you get there, the academics, sometimes it's easy to transition to, sometimes it's not, right? The athletic side of things, a lot of people realize that you may have been an all-star when you were in high school, but you get to college and everyone's an all-star no matter what division you're into, right? So what was that transition like as a student? And then what was it also like as an athlete once you made it to Wagner?
Yeah, so as a student, I thought it was fine. I went to a pretty big high school that was pretty competitive, and I thought that it prepared me pretty well academically. Honestly, I've done a lot better academically in college than I did in high school. I think just because I had a fresh start, I feel like I've just had these amazing resources here at college. So that transition wasn't too bad. And with triathlon, I was so used to time management in high school anyway. So to me, it seemed like, of course, when you transition from high school to college, you have more time, and you have more time to figure out where you need to spend that time, and just balance it and everything. So I really like that, and I've really thrived off of that extra time and figuring out where I need to spend it. So yeah, that's been fine. Athletically, it's I've had like ups and downs. I think originally when I came to college, the transition, it was pretty smooth. I was still really excited about the sport. Well, yes, I was very excited about the sport. I had like just committed and everything. And the first season was fine. But then my second year is when COVID hit.
Hmm.
So, no, actually, it was in my first year, that spring. So that's when things I feel like went up and down a bit. But overall, the transition was fine. I think I just got into a routine and a pattern with everything.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I couldn't imagine going through college with COVID and, needing to essentially not be in a classroom and not be training the same way and everything else. So, that's got to be the toughest part. Now, when you come out of that, what was it like kind of getting back to normalcy with being on campus and going back to classes and getting back to training and everything else? Did it feel like another fresh start? Because you had just started college, right? And COVID is hitting and everything is shutting down, and then you're getting back to it after a year or two. How did it feel coming out of COVID and kind of becoming a student athlete again?
Yeah, so COVID hit the spring of my first year. So then that fall of 2020, I wasn't on campus. None of my team was on campus. We were all at home. So that was a little bit different. And then the spring, I came back to campus, and the training was a bit off. We were going through a transition of coaches. I was really excited academically to be back on campus in person and everything. But I feel like starting from that point, I found it tough to really get into the sport again, like I had
Hmm.
been. I think after having, I guess it was like 9 months of training on my own completely and really needing to hold myself accountable, it was really tough. So finding that like pure like passion for the sport again was really, really hard. I think starting that spring, and I didn't, the NCAA season for triathlon is in the fall. So I wasn't even competing that spring. But then that fall, and I was back to competing, it just felt like, we are like back full force. And yeah, it was tough transitioning back to that again for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, understandably so. That's definitely tough. Now, on the academic side of things, like you said, you're double major. So while most student athletes are worried about their sport and just, their own major, you've got a multitude of things to worry about. How is it to balance the two things? And then obviously you have internships and you have, as you said, you have grad school that's going to be coming up. You have all of these different things. What does a kind of a day in the life look like for you balancing all of these different things?
Yeah, so each day looks a little bit different. Also pretty different in season and out of season. I mean, overall, I love this topic. I love the topic of balance in college sport because
Mhm.
there's so much to it. But yeah, I mean, so in season, I was doing about two practices a day, usually between 3 and 4 hours a day. But the thing is when you say that, it's 3 and 4 hours, 3 to 4 hours. But if you add in the time of just getting to practice, arriving 15 minutes early, all that stuff, it really adds up to a lot more. And then last semester I was in 5 courses. So I was usually having a couple hours of class each day and then balancing some other internships. Last semester I was doing some teaching of first year students. This was in like adjustment to college kind of courses. So taking that into account is basically like an additional 2 classes.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I mean, just navigating all that was a little bit of a transition, but I really thrive off of that energy of the constant going. And I really, something that I've done in college is I feel like really taken advantage of a lot of opportunities that I have. I've been very, very fortunate to have a lot of different opportunities available. So something that I'm very proud of is that I've been able to really sort of take advantage of those resources and these amazing people that I've met at college and make connections that I hope will last a really long time.
Mhm. So, what was it about sports psychology that enticed you? Everybody picks their major, and everybody's passionate about some of the things they're doing. Some people are just business majors because it's business and they feel the world is all about business, right? But there's other majors that you're passionate about. What was it about sports psychology that kind of drew you in and made you want to enter that field?
So I think it started when I was either a junior or senior in high school. I was taking a psychology course, and I just had a lot of thoughts during the course. And this was also in the time when I was talking to different schools and in this process. And I just kept thinking about how stressful it was just deciding a school and just trying to make this quote unquote perfect decision.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so stressful. And it was making me rethink if this is really something that I want to do. And I was like, whoa, like there's so much stress here, and I'm not even in the NCAA yet. I am just getting into it. And I was like, and so I was taking the psychology course, and I'm like, I really like this. Like I could see myself being like a therapist or being a psychologist or in one of those roles. And I was like, and then I just started looking into sports psychology more and more. And then my passion for it grew even more when I went to college. And right now I'm involved in quite a bit of NCAA SAC stuff, so the student athlete advisory committee, and just everything that's going on with mental health and athletics. I'm very happy that this is a field that I'm going into because there is a need for it. And just in seeing the amount of institutions that are bringing in a healthcare professional for their athletes is amazing. So I hope that that's what I'm doing someday.
Yeah. So you, as a student athlete and somebody who is studying sports psychology, you're kind of your own test subject, right? Like you get a chance to read about all of the things that are happening, see all of these resources firsthand, study them, but then you get to get a chance to apply them. What is it like when you're kind of going through the academic side of it, but you can also apply them yourself and essentially write the papers about it and do the studies about it because you're your own test subject? What's that like, being able to apply all of these things yourself?
Yeah, it's really interesting. And something else is just seeing my teammates and everyone else, like how they respond to things. It's very cool. I mean, sometimes it's a little bit overwhelming thinking about it all. But honestly, it just makes me really excited to go into the field. Like I probably still have 5 to 7 years of school left, but I just want to be there. I just want to work in this position because eventually I would like to work for a university and in private practice. Like I'm so ready to get these degrees because I just want to get into the field. So just seeing these experiences firsthand, like show me the need for this in institutions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And obviously, as I said when we started, mental health in sports has become a huge topic, right? Like there are more athletes that are coming out saying that they suffer from depression or that, there are things mentally that are really, really tough for them. As somebody who is studying it and, you have a hand in it right now and you're on advisory committees and things like that, what are some of these things that are being implemented at that NCAA level, or at least in schools, that you are seeing that are helping? And we're obviously at the time of recording this right on the verge of Mental Health Awareness Month. So, like, what are some of these things that you're seeing that are starting to help and be implemented on the college level, or at least for student athletes in general?
Yeah, well, something that I'm very happy about that NCAA is doing is first just taking the student athlete voice and listening to the student athletes and what we need. Because a lot of times these decisions that are made they might be for a certain population, so for student athletes, but student athletes aren't actually involved. So the decisions that are made, they could be helping, but there's also a very good chance that it's missing something. So I'm very happy to see that NCAA is very serious about taking the student athlete voice into consideration and listening to student athletes. What do you need? How can we support you in a meaningful way? Because I think what's been happening on a lot of campuses is that, if the campus maybe doesn't have enough resources, they're trying to support mental health, and they might do mental health initiatives or something, but that isn't getting at the root problem. Student athletes need deeper support than that. So being able to hire a sports psychologist, which is obviously very costly, that might be what is most beneficial to the student athletes. So I think schools just weighing those decisions of what will actually help the student athletes most is going to help us.
Mm-hmm. So you're on campus, right? Like you have the benefit of seeing the resources for student athletes. What are some of those resources that you guys have at Wagner that, you're really proud of, and that, you are probably studying and seeing how they implement them. So what kind of resources do you guys have as student athletes there?
Yeah, we've actually just made some great sort of advances in the area of mental health because the Northeast Conference got a grant, and each institution in the Northeast Conference got to decide to spend that money in some way helping the mental health of student athletes. So what Wagner did with that was hire she's a mental health counselor, and she works on campus with just student athletes, I think part-time. She's here a lot in the evenings, which works really well with the student athlete schedule. So that has been really helpful because Wagner is a very small school. I think it's about 2,000 students. So we didn't have someone specifically for student athletes. We just had on-campus counselors, but those resources were just always filling up. So to have someone specifically for student athletes is a huge step. And while maybe a lot of big schools have multiple sports psychologists, they might have, some kind of department specifically for mental health. Here at Wagner, that's a really big step. But we've also done some things within SAC. For example, we have a clinical. She's a professor of psychology, but she holds these talks, which allow student athletes to come together and just talk about what's going on campus and just bring student athletes together. I know some of these things are just hard to bring everyone in because people's schedules are so different. Mm-hmm. But I would say that the most impactful thing at Wagner has been our mental health counselor for athletics.
Yeah, that's great. And, I've read some things about mental health, and I've also, talked to different organizations, and we'll be talking to some different organizations throughout the month of May about, what they offer. And I know some of the things that they've said in the past is that even if the resources are there, it's tough to get some of the students to use them. Right. And so what have you seen on your own campus that can either refute that or, shows that students are taking advantage of these different things, despite, some of the numbers saying that them having these resources and they're still kind of afraid to go to, either the campus psychologist or go to any of these groups. So have you seen the same thing, or has it started to grow more and more students are taking advantage of them?
Yeah, honestly, I think that's a tough thing on college campuses. I don't know how many people have been seeing our mental health counselor, but other than that, I don't think that people really use the resources as much as they could. I mean, honestly, just getting people involved in SAC and other sort of organizations like that is usually pretty tough. Which on my end can be a little bit frustrating. I do a lot with SAC with the Northeast Conference, and it's like really trying to pull people together to do these initiatives, and it can be tough. And I don't know if this is like an impact like from COVID. I don't know if people just aren't inclined to get involved as much, but yeah, I've definitely seen that on campus, and I've heard that from other people who do similar roles with SAC. So yes, it's happening here as well.
Yeah. And do you think it's kind of a trust factor? I mean, some of the things that I've heard before is that, student athletes think that as soon as you tell, the on-campus sports psychologist that something's going on, they're going to run and tell your coach, right? So, there's organizations that have set things up where they, guarantee you that doesn't happen. What stays, what happens in that conversation stays in that conversation. Do you kind of feel like student athletes have a hard time trusting these resources because they think they're all connected?
Yes, I think that could also be an issue. Sort of on the side, I intern with the mental health counselor at Wagner, but I can't overlap with anything that she does with student athletes. She has a private practice on her own, so I intern there. And I mean, she has told me very clearly that like nothing can overlap. And I mean, just from my own experience, I know that none of that information can be shared. So I don't want to say that it's frustrating, but when people don't understand that, I mean, I can see where you're coming from. It's tough because those people, they can't share it. And if something did get shared, that would be a very major issue. So yes, it is having that trust in the people that you're talking to. So I really hope that, something can be done to overcome that. And what Wagner did is our mental health counselor is housed in athletics. So I don't know if that's helping or if it's hurting, because it's supposed to help because she's housed in athletics. It's not like you're going somewhere else to meet with her.
Hmm.
But I don't know if people think that, if our assistant AD sees you walk in there, if they're going to think something differently. But I really hope we can sort of, you know, get rid of that
Hmm.
stigma. But yeah, I think that might be where it is a bit right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you said it, there's definitely a stigma.
Yeah.
And it's something that I feel kind of wears off over time. I mean, you definitely see more professional athletes that are taking advantage of the resources that they have and, making sure that they have people that they can talk to. Um, you know, but what would you say? And then I want to get into our 5 question segment. What would you say are some of the practices, right? For any of the student athletes that are maybe listening to this, watching this, whatever else, what are some of the practices, maybe things that you use or things that you've studied that they should try and implement to make sure that they maintain a good level of mental health?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this is something that's studied, but I would say that you need to do what's best for you.
Hmm.
You need to sometimes put yourself first. And if that is meeting with a sports psychologist or a mental health counselor every week or every other week, if that's going to help you be your best self, then you need to do that for yourself. You can't think about what someone else is going to say, what your teammate's going to say, what your coach is going to say, because honestly, they don't need to know. If they happen to see it, then you say that that's what's helping you to perform at your best, to give your best academically, and to just be your best self. So whatever you need to do to be your best self, then do it.
Yeah. That's awesome. So, like I said, I want to get into our 5 questions portion, and the first one for you is: what was a race or a course that was really kind of monumental for you, something that you'll never forget?
Yeah, I would say my first NCAA race. This was in Pleasant Prairie, Wisconsin, which is just outside of Chicago. And it was, yeah, first NCAA race. It was crazy. I was sort of going through a tough time, and it was my best NCAA race. That was the first, and I've never had anything better. It was so exciting, even though it was very similar to races that I've done in the junior elite circuit when I was younger. It was just so cool to get to race on that level, and
Mhm.
and yeah.
Yeah. Who's an athlete that you look up to or somebody that has inspired you?
I would say Simone Biles. I'm I'm not a gymnast or anything, but I'm very intrigued by gymnastics. I really like the sport. And so on that end, she is very inspiring, but also just everything that she's done sort of in the mental health space, I think is very admirable.
Hmm. Who is, somebody academically, like a sports psychologist, somebody that you've either studied or maybe it's somebody you've worked with that, you've looked up to and you were really intrigued by their work?
Yeah, I don't have a specific name, but I would say that all of the my psychology professors right now at Wagner, they have been a great support system, and they're great individuals who have really helped me these past 4 years academically, sort of narrow in on what I want to do, help me form these great experiences, and they really excel in the area they study.
Hmm. So you kind of gave us a little bit of this already, but what's one important aspect that you would kind of give to maintaining a good level of mental health, along with a piece of advice to kind of cap things off? I guess we can kind of put those together. Obviously, what is something that somebody should be doing to maintain very good mental health, a healthy mind, along with any advice that you can share.
Yeah, I would say that in that process of transitioning to college and college sport, and figuring out how you're balancing your time, just to not forget to set aside time for yourself. I think that that's very easy to forget, and I think that that's something that I did not do well enough when I transitioned to college. But I've really tried to work on that recently, and it just helps so much in every area of my life. So just prioritizing what you need and what's best for your performance as an athlete and academically and with everything that you do, to remember what you need and remember to prioritize your own well-being in addition to, you know, being your best self.
Mhm. So, Ali, this was a really great conversation. Like I said, I love getting the student athlete perspective on some different things. And Obviously, I'm going to be talking to a lot of people that are either already in the field or looking to get into the field all throughout Mental Health Awareness Month. Before we go, do you have anything else that you would like to kind of tell the audience, either, some different resources or anything else before we go?
Yeah, I don't think that I have too much, but thank you so much for having me on here, Ryan. It's been great to just chat about all these different topics.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And, as long as we have people that want to continue getting into the sports psychology field, I think, our athletes and, the community in general is going to be a lot better off. So I appreciate all the studying that you are doing and everybody else that is in your field. So thank you very much for coming on and sharing your expertise. It's, like I said, it's been a very great conversation. I'll certainly be looking out for all the different work that you do and anything else. Hopefully you'll be listening in for all the different knowledge that I get from anybody else that is in the field. Hopefully, if there is anyone that you would like to be connected with that I do have on the show, certainly let me know and we'll try and get you connected with them. But as I said, Ally, this was a great conversation. Good luck the rest of the semester. And good luck getting into the field as well as, as an athlete. So again, thank you very much. And we'll be seeing you soon. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Athletes to Athletes podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation. To engage with everything the A2A platform has to offer, go to the App Store and search Athletes to Athletes to download our new app. You can check out our educational material and you'll ensure that you don't miss when a new episode of the A2A podcast drops. Again, thank you for listening. We'll see you again next time.